Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is 22nd of June 2022. These are the stories that we'll be discussing in detail during the course of our show. We'll begin with the spate of extrajudicial killings that have been happening in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. If we look at the latest statistics, since 5th of August 2019, more than 636 Kashmiris have embraced martyrdom in fake encounters. In this whole spate of fake encounters and extrajudicial killings, again there have been four more Kashmiri youth that have been martyred in these extrajudicial killings, so-called extrajudicial killings. In fact, they are just means to terminate more and more, to kill more and more Kashmiris, so that the movement that has begun in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir for the right to self-determination since the last few years goes down. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the earthquake that has happened in Afghanistan. Of course, Gayan and Barmal provinces in Paktika have been the most affected, and as per the latest details, around 920 people have been killed in this earthquake and around 600 have been injured. Pakistan also felt these earthquakes. Even in Islamabad, we did feel the shocks of these earthquakes. The epicenter is 51 kilometers. The depth is 51 kilometers. The epicenter is near Paktika. Then we'll, in our third story, be talking about the European Union GSP Plus mission that has arrived in Pakistan today to assess the progress in the implementation of the international conventions. As you very well know, there are about 27 international conventions as per the GSP Plus that Pakistan is a signatory to, and this GSP Plus status is going to end, and a new GSP Plus contract is to be signed between the European Union and Pakistan only if Pakistan complies to all the 27 conventions, and that is why the mission is here in Islamabad. Then we'll be talking about Obaidullah Baig Saab. His death anniversary is today, and of course he is not only a scholar, a journalist, environmentalist, a film documentary filmmaker and a novelist who was also part of one of the most famous programs on Pakistan television known and as Kasoti. He will always be remembered. In 2012 he left us for a higher abode, but his work still lives on. Then we'll be finally talking about writer Muhammad Hanif, who has withdrawn from the Goethe Institute because there is a Palestinian writer, Muhammad al-Kurd, a Palestinian writer and poet, who has been disinvited by the Goethe Institute. And as a sign of protest, Muhammad Hanif, the eminent Pakistani writer, has said that he withdraws from this prize at the Goethe Institute and will not be attending it. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the extrajudicial killings that have been happening since quite some time in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, around 636 since the 5th of August 2019, when Articles 370 and 35A were abrogated. More in the following report.
The people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are enduring worst excesses of state terrorism as BJP government is implementing its demographic designs in the occupied valley. In their fresh act of state terrorism, Indian forces have killed 4 civilians in 2 separate ongoing encounters in Pulwama and Baramulla district of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Since India's illegal and unilateral actions of 5th of August 2019, more than 636 Kashmiris have embraced martyrdom in fake encounters and so-called cordon and search operations. Highlighting dangers of Hindutva-inspired military crackdown, this year recorded 113 extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. Pakistan has strongly denounced a perpetual environment of terror, harassment and intimidation in the occupied valley. The Foreign Office spokesperson Asim Iftikhar said in a statement that intensified military crackdowns and the rising number of extrajudicial killings in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are part of the extremist anti-Muslim designs of the Hindutva-inspired BJP-RSS nexus in India. Pakistan will continue to extend all possible support to the Kashmiris in their just struggle for the right to self-determination, as pledged to them by the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions. Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is a classic case of Kashmiri genocide at the hands of Indian military forces, and international community must hold India accountable for the grave human rights violations.
Sundas Malik, who's the chairperson of the United Jammu and Kashmir Coalition, joins us online. Sundas Malik, thank you very much to have joined us. Sundas Malik, when you look at the number of incidents, whether it be the murders, the incarcerations, the rapes, and the extrajudicial killings, there's only an increase in the number of such incidents. And not only is the Indian government silent on it, but it is pointing the fingers whenever anything happens on the Muslims of India, and the world more or less also remains silent, apart from some reports that come out more or less, or some statements. Why is that so?
Well, I think it's best that you ask them this question on why they are silent so far. I think it is a shame that despite affirming the responsibility to protect at the UN General Summit in 2005, all the international countries who have the power of influence have failed to protect the rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It's important to understand one thing which I'd like to mention here. Extrajudicial killing is defined as going beyond the scope of law and committing a homicide in a country's peace. Whereas I think in Kashmir, what is happening now shouldn't be regarded as an extrajudicial killing. These are war crimes. These are war crimes being committed in a fascist occupied territory. And the world needs to take notice, especially those who claim to be the beacon of democracy and humanity. They need to step up and actually prove and show their footing on this principle and come out and stand for the people of Kashmir.
But Sundas Malik, are people standing up for the people of Kashmir? Pakistan is. Pakistan time and again talks about it on the different fora. You yourself have been talking about it on the different fora available. There are other Kashmiri leaders who talk about it. But do you see any other country talking as much and as passionately about the Muslims of India and of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as Pakistan is doing?
Well, I think it is important to sort of separate Pakistan from any other international actor, because Pakistan itself has a vested interest in Kashmir. When we talk about the rights of Kashmiris, we have been granted a right of a free and fair plebiscite under the UN SC resolutions, under the UN CIP resolutions, and we are waiting for that free and fair plebiscite. Pakistan has always done everything which is required to fulfill the requirements for that plebiscite, including the removal of extra forces. Whereas India, it has, like you mentioned before, it has only increased with time, because there is not development of the people of Kashmir or the prosperity of the Kashmiri people. Rather, they want to subvert them, suppress them, and basically demographically change the complete picture of the Kashmir Valley from a Muslim dominated area to maybe a Muslim minority or a Hindu majority.
When you talk of subversion, suppression, we've all been witness to it since the last couple of years, and now it seems as if whether it be the BJP government, whether it be the Indian forces, whether it be the Indian judiciary, they have all kind of formed a nexus to oust the Muslim population out of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and B, slowly and steadily even out of India. Their power is being pushed to the limit. They are being suppressed in every way possible. Do you feel that the Muslims within the held Kashmir region in India and within India itself will come out? We have seen the protests in the last couple of days and weeks. Do you feel these protests are going to gain momentum?
Well, I think as much as they try to suppress the Muslim majority, Muslims, I consider themselves to be the biggest minority. So they have quite a huge majority in India. And as far as is concerned, 95% of it consists of Muslims. I don't think that these suppressive tactics are going to yield any sort of curtailment in protest. I think with time it is going to increase. Because as far as the Indian government and the BJP government is concerned, we see condemnation from the Prime Minister, some things he said regarding the language which is being used by BJP leaders. But as far as the ground reality is concerned, it is very much anti-Muslim, anti-Christian, anti any religion which is not Hindu. So
So,
I
this
think it's
Malik,
not
this
going to
ground
happen.
reality that you talk about being totally anti any religion apart from the Hindu religion, has it always been dominant in India, or is it only since the BJP government came into power that it has been brought to the forefront?
Well, I would agree with the fact that it has been brought to the forefront since the BJP government has come into power. But when we read about the history of Hinduism, when we read about for example, let me quote Savarkar here when he mentions the ethos of being a Hindu. Involves being pure in their land of any non-Hindu entities. So when we say that what BJP has done, it has only further propagated in the I would say the basis of Hinduism. They have brought it up to light, and they have now come in full light and shown the world what Hinduism to India is.
Sundas Malik, what is the end game as far as Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned? We know that they want to limit the presence or the power of the Muslims in the Indian held valley. They also want the Hindus to gain power so that when and whenever they go ahead with the plebiscite or the right to self-determination, the percentage of Hindus becomes higher than that of Muslims, and of course the whole struggle of the Muslims of this held region becomes null and void. Do you feel that something can be done by the Muslims within the region in order to kind of go against all these activities, subversive and otherwise, by the Indian government?
Well, as far as the Muslims in the region is concerned, we see how suppressed the people of occupied valley are. They're not allowed to leave their houses without any weaponry or anything at all, for that matter. They're not allowed to wear firan. Now there is a ban on sorts on their clothing now. So I think as far as their reaction is concerned, I don't think we can expect more than what they have already. As far as the Hindus, as far as Muslims in India are concerned, I have a huge majority with them to and make their voices heard and let the world know that these fascist and suppressive, changes in the Indian democracy, as they call it, they're nothing but just sort of a design to remove not just Muslims, but any other minority which might be residing in India. What has happened with the Sikhs, what's happened with the Christians, what's happened with the Muslims, India seems to be just a country for Hindus, and that's it. There is no place for Muslims. And when we talk about Kashmir specifically, it is Kashmir occupied, illegally occupied Kashmir. So the intensity of their hatred towards the people of the Kashmir Valley can only be gauged by their hatred which they have for the people, Muslims living inside India at the moment. So comparatively, I think we are in a far greater threat, and that's why I think.
All right, Sundas, the matter remains that when it comes to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Sundas, it seems as if the Hindus or the Indian government wants the Pakistani, the Azad Jammu and Kashmir as well, other regions in Pakistan as well, they call it the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. But when it comes to the Muslims, it says whenever a Muslim raises his or her voice against the atrocities that are being committed by India, they say, if you are so troubled by what we are doing to you, why don't you go to Pakistan, whether it be the biggest actors in India or whether it be the small traders and farmers who are Muslim. This is what they are confronted with every passing day. You said that the extrajudicial crimes need to be called war crimes and no longer extrajudicial killings. Don't you feel that what is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and also within India when it comes to Muslim can also be termed as genocide?
Well, of course, it is a systematic genocide of the Muslim population. When you mentioned about them telling people to go back to Pakistan and calling Pakistan administered Kashmir as Pakistan occupied Kashmir, I think it all lies within their facade. They've always tried to suppress facts with rhetoric. And that is, I think, all Indian government and the BJP government have to stand on. And that is rhetoric. When it comes to the Azad Kashmir, as they say, Azad Kashmir has had, I think, 78% voter turnout in the last general elections, whereas in India, in Indian occupied Kashmir, the voter turnout was less than 3% in their elections. So when they talk about democracy and freedom and right to life, has glamorized of it rather than looking into the fact.
All right, so this, when it comes to, grounds that the Indian government is standing on, and you say that this is what it is standing on, aren't these shaky grounds? Don't you feel that you said that the Muslims are a large minority within India? Don't they have a voice? And here I am talking politically as far as the vote count is concerned. Doesn't the BJP government also understand that if tomorrow they decide in the next elections not to vote for the BJP, that is going to create a huge dent?
Well, I think yes, there has been a huge increase in fascist feelings, ideology. Government has been very tricky in capturing the masses of India who were dealing with poverty and hunger and lack of facilities, and directed them towards the Muslims and minorities and blame for their problems towards the Muslims. So I think as far as representation is concerned, a real and imminent threat in the future as well. Muslim representation in Kashmir, we forget about it. Most of political leadership is under custody. More than 4,000 Hurriyat leaders are currently in Indian jails. We just saw the Indian judicial system created in Malik Saab. So as far as Muslim representation is concerned, I think it's close to none. There, I think, therefore, their own political populace in India. So I think the Muslims in themselves need to sort of introspect in order to carry out being Indian Muslim.
I think this introspection, Sundas Malik, is extremely important, but whether the Indian government, whether the BJP government, whether the people who are in power within India, Sundas Malik will introspect, this is really a huge question mark that we will only see with time.
So I think Muslims need to rise up now against.
That is true. Muslims need to rise up now. I hope that they do rise up to the occasion. We've been seeing the protests that have been happening in the last few days and the last few weeks. I really hope and wish that the Indian government understands that the Muslims are not a small minority. They are a huge minority within India, and they have a voice. And if they do not comply with this minority within India and in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, instead of resorting to extrajudicial killings and rapes and murders and putting people in jail and their incarcerations, that the whole scenario as far as Indian politics is going to change with the next elections and in the coming months. Thank you very much, Sundas Malik, Chairperson, United Jammu and Kashmir Coalition, to have joined us to talk about the spate of extrajudicial killings that have been happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, their impact and the future of the Muslim vote and voice within India and in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the earthquake that has happened in Afghanistan. Tremors were also felt in Pakistan. As far as the latest reports go, 920 people have died in Afghanistan alone. There have been casualties that we've heard of that happened in Pakistan as well. Around 600 have been injured. The depth was 51 kilometers. The epicenter was near Paktika, and Gayan and Barmal districts in Paktika have been the worst affected. More in the following report.
A 6.1 magnitude earthquake has jolted southeast Afghanistan, killing at least 280 people and left scores injured. Pictures show landslides in ruined mud-built homes in eastern Paktika province, where rescuers are scrambling to treat the injured. The head of the Taliban administration's Natural Disaster Ministry, Mohammad Naseem Haqqani, stated that the investigations are being conducted to determine the number of casualties. In a tweet, the World Health Organization said its teams are on the ground for emergency response, including providing medicine, trauma services, and conducting needs assessment. According to the United States Geological Survey, the earthquake hit at 1:24 a.m. about 46 kilometers southwest of the city of Khost, which lies close to the country's border with Pakistan. In Pakistan, tremors were felt in Peshawar, Islamabad, Lahore, Kohat, Mohmand, Swat, Bunair, and other parts of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif extended his condolences and an offer of support to Afghan brethren. Premier Shehbaz Sharif further elaborated that people in Pakistan share the grief and sorrow of their Afghan brethren, and relevant authorities are working to support Afghanistan in this time of need. It's pertinent to mention here that large parts of South Asia are seismically active because a tectonic plate known as the Indian Plate is pushing north into the Eurasian Plate.
Zahid, Rafi Saab, who's earthquake seismic director, joins us online. Rafi Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. What happened in Afghanistan, this earthquake that happened last night, late last night, is it something that is going to be a continuation of events? Because if we see a little bit in the past, from 1998, in 2002 and 2015, similar earthquakes have also been seen in the region. Do you feel this is something that happens periodically in Afghanistan?
Thank you very much. Yes, actually, this area, which is very close to the border of Pakistan, and the last night magnitude 5.9 that was struck and occurred in this area. So that area is located where the earthquakes are mostly or the commonly come, and you can say that this portion, there are a lot of faults are passing through it, and the closest fault is the Gardez fault, and this earthquake occurred very close to the Gardez fault, and we believe that this earthquake is because of the movement of this fault. And in this area, we were looking about the history, and we observed that mostly in this area, less than 5 magnitude earthquake occurred. But generally, if we observe the last 10 to 20 years record, so magnitude in between 5 and 7 earthquake occur in this area. So tectonically, this is a very active area, and in the past, we observed many earthquakes, and in future, we may expect some more earthquake in this area. And also the Pakistan area, North Waziristan or South Waziristan, particularly Rizmak and Miran Shah, they are very close to this area. So we can expect that we should be careful in future, and we can expect some more earthquake in this area.
Zahid, Rafi Saab, when you talk of being careful, do you feel certain measures can be taken to avoid earthquakes in the future? You talk about these tectonic plates and certain the way that the earth is changing, due to which these earthquakes have been happening in the last few years. Do you feel that some kind of measure can be taken in order to avoid this or to reduce the intensity of the earthquakes in the future?
Actually, unfortunately, Paktia, this is a Paktia province in Afghanistan. It's not, this area is not a developed area, and unfortunately, the area, Pakistan area, which is close to this epicenter, it is also not a developed area. So it's a very long way to protect the people, not only in the Pakistan but also in Afghanistan. And you heard that more than 900 people has been died because of these earthquakes and the timing of the earthquakes. And if we want to save the life of the people, we have to observe the building code and the infrastructure, the better infrastructure of this area. not only in Afghanistan, but also we can care about the area of Pakistan. So better infrastructure can save the life of the people. Other than we don't have any option to save the life and to reduce the economic losses. Yes.
Can any geographical modifications be made as far as these areas are concerned to reduce the impact of earthquakes?
A geographical area, yes, obviously, this could be a one factor. But what we can do for the Afghanistan, we have to take care about our country, because our country receiving many earthquakes from the Afghanistan side. So we have to follow the building code. We have to follow the our bylaws for the construction, because the construction is the reason for the death of the people, and earthquake is not the reason for the death of the people. Earthquake is a natural phenomenon, but we are living in the infrastructure or the building. So we have to follow the rules. We have to make the new rules. We have to change the culture. We have to change the lifestyle of the people living across the border and in the earthquake-prone area in order to save the life of the people.
Zahid Sahib, you say that earthquakes are a natural phenomenon. Despite that, we've seen an increase in the number of earthquakes in the last few decades. Why is that so?
Yeah, it's a general perception that the earthquakes are increasing. The frequency of the earthquakes is increasing, but being a seismologist, we don't believe in this area. Yes, actually, it can be happen. Let's say in some time, in some area, there are big earthquakes occurred. So because of the big earthquake, there is a series of some small earthquakes occurring in that area that looks that the frequency of the earthquake is increasing. Actually, it is not the case. If we are very close to the fault, we are living close to the earthquake fault, and the faults are very active. So it can anytime trigger. So the earthquakes are coming. So that's why 80% earthquakes are coming from the Afghanistan area, particularly in the Hindu Kush area, in the Afghanistan-Tajikistan border. So this is not the case that in near past we say that the frequency of the earthquake is increasing. This is not the case.
Zahid Sahib, you say that the faults are more active since the last few years. For a layman who doesn't understand what and how these earthquakes or these tremors happen, how do faults become more active?
Actually, main fault is the Chaman fault, which is a major fault. It is an active geological fault in Pakistan and Afghanistan that runs for over 850 kilometers. So tectonically, it is a system of geological fault. So in Afghanistan, that fault is called Herat fault or Gardes fault. But when it enters in Pakistan, it becomes the Chaman fault. It moves from north to the southward direction. Actually, it is a line. It is a division between the Eurasian plate and the Indian plate. So Indian plate is pressurizing the Eurasian plate, and the Indian plate is moving toward the northward direction. So it increases the pressure in that area. So that pressure triggers other fault which is available or running through in that area. Let's say MBT or MMT faults are very close to this system. So that is why one fault move, it triggers some other fault. So it generated the energy. We say that is an earthquake. So this is a phenomenon actually occurring in that area.
Zahid Sahib, do you forecast more frequent earthquakes in the future? And you talked about, the type of constructions that we have, and they need to be modified as per these tremors or these earthquakes are concerned. Do you feel that the governments in Pakistan and Afghanistan need to come up with measures to construct buildings that are earthquake proof?
Uh, uh, the question is very simple, but the answer is not the simple one, and it takes political will and it takes a lot of time. You have to develop the policies. And in Pakistan, we can say many things because in time to time we revise the building code, and recently the government of Pakistan revised the building codes. And now the other step is the implementation of the building codes. So if you have the better infrastructure, it is better to save the life of the people. So the following the building codes and the following the bylaws, that is the only way to save the lives and the economic losses of Pakistan.
When you come to Afghanistan, Zahid Saab, we know the situation that is engulfing our neighborhood country. It is already engulfed in a lot of economic, humanitarian crisis. People are already facing a lot of hardships every single day. And to add to that comes this devastating earthquake that has taken the lives of around 920 people as we speak right now. And I'm sure the number is going to increase in the next couple of hours or days, and the number of people injured as well. What should the people of Afghanistan do, in your point of view, with the limited resources that they have, in order to help themselves and their loved ones from getting injured or from succumbing to earthquakes?
Let's say if you talk about this earthquake, so it's a very remote farming villages in the eastern Afghanistan, province of Pakistan. And you heard that the authority had to dispatch a rescue worker by helicopter to dig out the people from that area. So this is the situation of Afghanistan. It's a geographical situation. We cannot change it. We cannot change in a few days or in a few months or in a few years. That there's also obviously some limitation, financial limitation, expertise of the Afghan government and the Afghan organization, how they can easily or they have either they are able to approach that area. I believe it is not an easy one for the Afghan government and the Afghan rescue organization. So I cannot say anything or cannot advise to the Afghan government. So it's a very long way to develop the infrastructure.
It's a long way ahead, because of course there are a lot of other issues that the Afghan people and the Afghan government are also confronted with. A general layman question again: once an earthquake happens, whenever it happens, whether it be in Pakistan or in Afghanistan, what should a person do? How should one, what are the steps that me or you need to take if we are confronted with an earthquake or a tremor, whether we live in a vertical installation like apartments or we live in houses?
You remember 2005 earthquake, Muzaffarabad, Kashmir earthquake, when more than 76,000 people died. The time was 8:30 time, and most of the school children and the people are under a shelter, under the houses. When the earthquake occurred, that is why the building collapses and a lot of people died because of this one. Unfortunately, this earthquake occurred midnight, and the whole population was laying under the shelter. So that is why a lot of casualties happen. If there is in the morning time, then you can save your life. You can come out from your houses. You can run away from the hilly area. Landslide could be happen. So, but unfortunately, if earthquake occurred in the midnight, then there are a lot of chances for the casualties. But in the morning, you can save your life by running away or come out from the building or your houses. But in the midnight, you have very limited chances to survive.
But when you say around midnight, for example, if you're in a house or in an apartment building, and if an earthquake happens and if you see that it's going to become severe and you do manage to get up, can you take shelter underneath some kind of a table, underneath some kind of installation, so that if the wall breaks down, it does not break down directly on you? Are there some other measures that we could take as well?
Yes, but it is a minimum a year, you can say. But when the whole building collapses, then if you are just sitting or laying inside the
So you need to come out of the building
table,
and take yourself
so
as much away from the building or the house as possible to avoid any casualty or to avoid being injured from an earthquake such as this. When you look, Zahid Sab, at the spate of earthquakes, and I just mentioned in the very beginning as well, 1998 6.1 magnitude earthquake happened in Afghanistan's northeast. It killed 4,500 people. 2002, another 6.1 magnitude earthquake happened in Afghanistan that killed about 1,000 people in the northern area of that country. We remember the 2005 earthquake. We've been talking about that. Not only was Pakistan affected, but Afghanistan was also affected. And now comes this earthquake. You say it's 5.9. A lot of other people say it's 6.1 magnitude earthquake. And the depth was 51 kilometers. What I need to also understand is, what do you mean by when they say that the earthquake happened at a depth of 51 kilometers? What impact does it have on the end result of that earthquake? If, for example, instead of 51 kilometers, it was 45 or 35 kilometers?
yes, definitely. When earthquake occurs, the depth matters. If it is a shallow, then it will be a damaging earthquake, because the energy generated by the earthquake suddenly reach toward the surface of the earth. So the shallow depth is the damaging earthquake. There are a lot of earthquakes. Maximum earthquakes are occurring 150 kilometer or 200, more than 200 kilometer depth. So even 7 magnitude earthquake will not be the damaging earthquake. So that is why the earthquakes who are very shallow earthquakes that are the damaging earthquake. And also the earthquake in the hilly area, remember, it will be a very damaging earthquake. But some earthquakes who are occurring in the plain area, in the soft land, that will not be the damaging earthquake. So the in hilly area, there could be some other geological phenomena like the landsliding and the falling of the rocks and other stones. So that trigger another things. Even you remember the Atabad Lake. This is because of the tremor occur in that area, and the whole mountain fell down in the river, and it created a Atabad Lake. So the earthquake in the hilly area and the shallow depth, it could be the very damaging earthquakes.
Thank you very much, Zahid. Rafi Sahab, Earthquake Seismics Director, talking to us about the earthquake that has jolted Afghanistan and Pakistan to some extent as well. We did feel the tremors, but it is Afghanistan that has brunt the most of the damage as far as this earthquake is concerned. Around 920 people have lost their lives and around 600 people have been injured. We all can only pray for those who have lost their lives and that those who are injured get well soon. And of course, Afghanistan is our brotherly country, our neighborhood country. All our prayers and wishes go to them as well. Let's come to our last 3 stories very quickly. The first is about the European Union team that has arrived in Pakistan for crucial talks regarding the GSP plus status. As you very well know, Pakistan was given the GSP plus status. That was a huge boost for its economy. There were a lot of concessions that were given to Pakistani exports, and now that the government wants Pakistan to be an export-oriented economy, the importance of GSP plus becomes even more paramount. Now, this monitoring mission that is here is going to inspect the implementation of the 27 conventions that include the protection of human rights and child labor as well. And it is after the European Union mission is all right and feels that Pakistan is compliant with these 27 conventions that it will give the go ahead for the new GSP plus status to be put into place, because as we very well know, the old GSP plus status that Pakistan had is coming to an end. There's a certain time limit as far as this GSP plus status is concerned. So we wish Pakistan all the very best, and we hope that the European Union Commission and the mission that is here finds Pakistan to be compliant with all the 27 conventions, because for Pakistan the GSP plus status is extremely important in these days where Pakistan needs to have a very strong economy and a strong export system. Then we'll be talking about, ladies and gentlemen, a legend. Now, this person known as Obaidullah Baig Saab, he was not only a respected scholar, he was a journalist, he was an environmentalist, he was a film and documentary filmmaker, novelist, one of the most precious minds that Pakistan television has produced. Obaidullah Baig Saab was part in fact of Pakistan television. He produced hundreds of documentaries. He was part of a legendary show that was called Kasauti, and people still remember that. You can also find these shows on your YouTube. Obaidullah Baig Saab unfortunately left us on this very day in 2012 because of cancer. He leaves behind a wonderful wife who has also been part of Pakistan television, Salma Baig Sahiba, and his daughters. May his soul rest in eternal peace. His legend lives on, his work lives on, and legends like him are rarely born again. All we can say is our deepest condolences on this day that he left us on in 2012. And then finally, let's come to Pakistani writer Muhammad Hanif Saab. Muhammad Hanif Saab is a legendary Pakistani writer. He has written a lot of controversial and not so controversial Pakistani novels. Now, what has happened that Muhammad Hanif Saab was invited to the Goethe Institute for a prize ceremony. But now he has said that he will no longer participate in this conference that was being held by the Goethe Institute in Hamburg, when the conference disinvited Muhammad al-Kurd, who is a Palestinian writer and poet. He was this Palestinian poet and writer was first invited, then disinvited. He has written Beyond the Lone Offender, Dynamics of the Global Right. This is the summit that was being held from the 23rd to the 26th of June in Hamburg, and he was disinvited because it was said that he was not respectful enough towards Israel. Now, as a result of this, as a sign of protest, Pakistani celebrated writer Muhammad Hanif Saab has also decided not to be part of this conference. We are highlighting, we are raising our hands, our words in protest as to what is happening in Palestine. We are doing this through our foreign office, we are doing this on all the different fora, and this is just another step in that direction. I hope the world understands. I hope that Israel understands also what it is perpetrating towards the Palestinians by occupying their lands. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to you, us in Pakistan. Stay safe, follow the SOPs as far as COVID-19 are concerned as the cases are increasing. See you tomorrow inshallah.